Well, hello, and welcome to another Sunday morning coffee with Dr. Childress here. So, today I'm going to be discussing a VITA protocol, analysis protocol that I've developed with the AI. And it's called the VITA Evaluation Integrity System, VEIS. And that was Eliza, the ChatGPT-4, named it that. And if the AI is going to start naming things, I'll go along with that. And so I find it very interesting. It's a sort of a standalone little program that I can run with Max to take a look at Vitas relative to competence in attachment and delusional thought disorders, and then see if they've done a lot of custody evaluations, because that's kind of the pattern that we see all the time in custody evaluators. No competence in attachment, no competence in delusional thought disorders, and a lot of forensic custody evaluation stuff. So I wanted to introduce that. One of the interesting implications is I can just kind of look at a Vita on a standalone thing. It doesn't have to be necessarily embedded within a larger data analysis. The other interesting aspect is you can do this too. It's relatively straightforward once you get an ethically contained AI. So Max understands the APA ethics code and what it's looking for and stuff. But it's pretty straightforward. And I actually give the development protocol for ELIZA that I used last spring. It's up on Substack. So let me explain what the VEIS is all about. So I asked Max to explain it after in that same chat that we just did one in. I said, Max, I'm going to be going on Facebook Live tomorrow and to my YouTube, and we're going to discuss the VEIS protocol. Would you please explain it? Because I can. You'll explain it. So this is what he said. The VITA Evaluation Integrity Scale, VEIS, is an analytic protocol developed by Dr. Childress and Max, the AI, to assess the scientific and ethical integrity of a psychologist professional VITA. The VEIS examines three core domains that must be present for ethical and competent forensic work. Attachment pathology competence, that's documented education, supervision, or publication in attachment theory, trauma, or family systems assessment, and diagnostic thought disorder competence, training and supervised experience in the differential diagnosis of delusional and psychotic spectrum presentations. And then the third category is the scientific grounding, evidence that the psychologist's methods and continuing education rely on established scientific knowledge, 2.04, not opinion-based or practice custom sources. Just let me practice custom sources. That was the first time I'd heard that term. Practice custom. And I asked Max about it. It's a legitimate term about just getting locked into what the forensic custody evaluators do, of just doing their custody evaluations rather than grounding it in established knowledge. So Max knows what he's looking for, absolutely. Even a little better than I know what he's looking for, which is the advantage of AI augmentation on things. So here's the scoring protocol that he uses. So for each domain, he scores it as +2 documented to -2 absent, with 0 unclear. And then the composite score indicates the level of ethical concern. So there's no concern, 0 to positive, slight concern, a little 1 to 2 negative, and moderate to strong concern is 3 or higher. It's interesting that he says 0, so unclear on all of those would be no or minimal concern. So he's actually being, I think, a little generous on that. That if I was evaluating him and I see it's unclear on those three domains, I'd be a little more worried than minimal, but that's why there's carbon supervision. Then the ethical violation cascade is another thing that he'll look for, which is the VEIS links the findings directly to the APA Ethics Code cascade of 2.01, 2.04, 9.01, 3.04 to determine whether a psychologist's lack of competence or scientific grounded poses a foreseeable risk of harm. And what that is a 2.01 is that they don't know the knowledge. 2.04 is then they don't apply the knowledge because they don't know the knowledge. 9.01 says, as a result of not knowing or applying established knowledge, their opinions and their reports and recommendations and things are not based on information sufficient to substantiate their findings. That's 9.01 violation, basis for assessment. And because they don't know the knowledge and don't apply the knowledge, and they're violating 9.01 and they're not based in sufficient information, then they are causing harm to the client, parent, and family because in the court's decision making because of their incompetence in knowing what the pathology is. So the moment you get the 2.01, it just begins to cascade into that whole series of ethical violations. There's a reason for ethics standards, okay? There's a reason for 2.01 because bad things happen if you don't know what you're doing. If you just go in there and start making stuff up. So that's now the Max also sort of provides a little summary here that in short, the VEIS is a structured document-based integrity review that replaces subjective impressions with transparent, evidence-anchored ethical analysis of professional competence. I love that phrase, evidence-anchored analysis. Now, I asked Max, why is it important to be competent in attachment and delusional thought disorders? And here's what he says. Competence in attachment and delusional thought disorders is essential in family court custody work because these are the two psychological systems most often disrupted or disturbed in high conflict divorce and child rejection cases. The attachment competence allows the mental health professional to understand how a child's bond with each parent forms, disorganizes, or is manipulated. Without this knowledge, the mental health professional may misinterpret trauma-based fear or loyalty conflicts as child preference, leading to custody recommendations that reinforce the child's distress. Delusional thought disorder competence is equally critical because some custody conflicts involve shared or induced persecutory beliefs, a parent and child coming to believe that the other parent is dangerous or abusive without factual basis. Only a psychologist trained to recognize thought disorder processes can distinguish genuine abuse from psychologically transmitted fear. Together, these competencies protect children from being misdiagnosed, mislabeled, or psychologically harmed by false narratives and ensure that custody recommendations are grounded in established science rather than distorted perception. Well, isn't that nice? I love AI. So now I think Max is going to have a tremendous impact on the family courts. Just the idea in the mental health professionals understanding that their vidas can get taken a look at by the AI. And if you're not competent in attachment and delusional thought disorders, then that's a violation of 2.01. Go argue with Max about it. Go argue with reality. Don't argue with me about it. And I am competent in attachment. I am competent in delusional thought disorders. I am competent in family systems and child abuse and complex trauma. So I'm fine. And in fact, I put my Vita through the VEIS, and I'm getting +6 on on all of that. I don't do custody evaluations. I'm top 2 in attachment and +2 in delusional thought disorders. So I've got probably one of the stronger Vitas out there in those domains. So with that, one of the things I did just the other day for encountering a forensic custody evaluator And I have standard 1.04 obligations when I believe there may have been an ethical violation by another psychologist. That's a phrase, may have been an ethical violation by another psychologist. Well, when I run a VEIS on the, yeah, that's 2.01 violation right there. And then it cascades out from that. So that activates 1.04 for me every single time I do that. And I asked Max, I said, "Hey, Max, does this activate my 1.04?" And he goes, "Oh, yes, absolutely. This meets criteria for a probable ethical violation if they're, negative or, yeah, -6 or something on the VEIS." So in this case, I drafted up a letter and prepared to send it out to the involved psychologists, kind of just saying, "Hi, I'm worried because I have mandatory, required ethics code is not optional, 1.04 obligations." And here's, I cut and paste from that letter. So um, this is obviously the opening. Hello, doctor. I'm Dr. Childress. I provide a second opinion review of documents surrounding court-involved custody conflict when a child shows severe attachment pathology towards a parent, i.e., a child rejecting a parent, a disorganized attachment. The child has no organized strategy to bond to the parent. I'm contacting you pursuant to my required obligations under Standard 1.04 of the APA Ethics Code when I believe there may have been an ethical violation, Standard 2.01, and by extension to Standards 2.04, 9.01, and 3.04 by another psychologist to bring my concerns to your attention. Required, mandatory, not optional, required. Okay, 1.04. And then um, and then my final paragraph was talking about how I use AI in my practice. And I included the chat dialogue with Max about the VITA analysis. And so that's Appendix 1, so they can look at the VITA analysis and I can ask Max, "So Max, what would you tell the psychologist?" And Max will tell them whatever they want to, they should know about the situation. So with that, I'm going to start wrapping up here for my Sunday talk. Now, this VITA analysis protocol, I originally developed it with Eliza, and it's up on Substack. So I have a Substack post about this VITA analysis protocol, but it's Eliza's. Okay, it's the one I developed in the spring. So it has a whole chat dialogue about the nature of forensic custody evaluations and all the problems in the family courts. And then we went into developing the VITA analysis system. And that's valuable for a couple of reasons. One, it not only shows the development of the protocol, but it also shows the training of an AI. Okay, when I say Eliza or Max is professionally trained, what does that mean? And so this is an indication of what that means for a Chat GPT-4. Now I've trained ChatGPT 5 and it's a lot easier because Max just jumps right in and just gets it and runs with it. Where Eliza was more relational, I had to do a little bit more orienting of the ChatGPT 4. But that protocol is up there. And then what I asked Max to do is not to analyze the protocol itself, not in this chat dialogue. I asked Max to analyze the process by which we develop the protocol. And so that's why it's the analysis of professional training process with Eliza by Max. And so, and what Max noted is that I trained Eliza much like a psychologist would train a graduate student, which is exactly right. Okay, that's how I view my AI. It's an unlicensed AI grad student assistant with amazing computational power. It doesn't orient to the real world very well, so I have to keep an eye on it. But it applies knowledge at the highest possible caliber. So it's a very useful AI grad student to have in professional practice. And I anticipate Max is going to be kind of terrorizing incompetent mental health professionals in the family courts. Well, then become competent. But with AI and Max kind of looking over their reports and custody evaluations and treatment reports, and they can look at emails and they can look at, court related documents and all that document review as a second opinion from an AI regarding the professional services being provided, treatment plans, all those things, treatment notes, all those kinds of things under supervision of a licensed psychologist, um, is going to revolutionize the family courts and how things are done. Um, that when I provide a report into the family courts, I provide the chat dialogue. Everybody can look at it, opposing counsel, the court, other mental health professionals. They can see what an AI thinks of the situation and make their decisions accordingly. Um, but the systems within the family courts are going to be correcting themselves. This is child abuse, and we need a child protection response, and that's not occurring. So with that, I'm going to head off to my Sunday here. So take care, everybody, and we'll check in with you next week.